as we come on the air, we are following breaking news that does come out of the Middle East. We are learning this morning a missile fired from Yemen set off sirens in central Israel. An Israeli military spokesperson reporting that a surface-to-surface missile launched from Yemen hit an uninhabited region of central Israel Sunday, resulting in no casualties. The incident occurred shortly after air raid sirens were activated in Tel Aviv, Israel, and surrounding areas. This did prompt citizens to seek shelter. The military releasing a statement saying, quote, "Following the sirens that surrounded a short while ago in central Israel, a surface-to-surface missile was identified crossing into central Israel from the east and fell in an open area. No injuries were reported," end quote. The attack highlights the ongoing tensions in the region and the potential for long-range missile strikes from neighboring countries. Israeli authorities are likely to investigate this incident further and even consider possible responses in retaliation. Joining us live this morning to further discuss this breaking news alert is Gerard Filitti, Senior Counsel at the Lawfare Project. Gerard, good morning to you. Always a pleasure speaking with you here on Live Now from Fox.
Good morning. A pleasure to be here as well.
So a lot to dissect this Sunday morning, Gerard. These missile strikes from Yemen, IDF saying that it hit an uninhabited region. Thankfully, this morning, no casualties, but it does show that conflict and fighting does resume despite ceasefire talks. Could you catch us up, please?
Well, it shows that the conflict is nowhere near over yet. What we understand is that the Houthis in Yemen, a terrorist group that is backed by Iran, launched a hypersonic missile aimed at central Israel yesterday. The missile was not intercepted by Israel's Arrow defense system and actually crossed the border into Israel before either being hit by another defense system or falling to the ground in central Israel. This marks another escalation by Iran because remember, the Houthis are a terrorist organization. They are not capable of developing such technology on their own, but rather obtain these missiles from Iran. This shows an increasing escalation on the part of Iran towards continuing pressure on Israel and continuing its attacks on Israel at the same time as Israel is engaged in Gaza and fighting Hezbollah in the north.
Gerard, you discussed the increase in escalation, and it's the perfect segue to discuss if there's an increase in escalation, how is that helping with ceasefire negotiations? Because for many, it seems counteractive.
It's not helping with ceasefire negotiations, and I think that most people agree at this point that ceasefire is not something that's likely to happen. Neither side, but especially Hamas, has shown an indication to actually finalize a ceasefire agreement. Hamas is always walking away at the last minute, even as Israel expresses needs to continue operations in Gaza at the border with Egypt after this war in order to secure from future attacks. So it does not seem likely that there will be a ceasefire, quite frankly, and these escalations are increasing from Iran and from other actors, from Iranian proxies, in order to pressure the international community into condemning Israel's right to defend itself.
Gerard, we know that this conflict in the Middle East has been highly politicized, right? Even in Israel, several people this Sunday morning not too pleased with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. They feel like he's been, quote, weak with his handling of the war. Then right here in the U.S., we saw with the debate, right? Questions asked by those ABC commentators to VP Harris and former President Trump about the conflict in the Middle East. Could you put this into perspective? Because if a lot of eyes are on this and world leaders are looking, could it potentially mean that the U.S. response could be seen as, quote, weak?
Well, in Israel, the debate centers around whether or not the negotiations to release the hostages are favorable or not. People, families of the hostages, Israeli citizens, understandably want their countrymen back, and many of them see negotiation as the best way of handling it. However, the Israeli government is pursuing a policy that seems to favor military action to secure the hostages, understanding that the needs of the majority of the country cannot be sacrificed for the safety of the hostages, unfortunately. U.S. domestic policy is a different issue. Even though Kamala Harris has stated that she supports the right of Israel to defend itself and will continue to provide it with weapons, there is a discrepancy between what she says and what she does. She has surrounded herself with staff people who are known to dislike Israel intensely, to believe that it should not exist as a state, and she also has anti-Semites on her staff, which makes many question whether what she's saying is accurate. This puts pressure on Israel to continue its operations now as quickly as possible, in the fear that if Kamala Harris is elected president, she will aid she will end aid for Israel and actually pressure it into stopping its military right to defend itself. That is the bigger picture within Israel. The fear that a Harris presidency will not be favorable to its ability to continue defending itself.
Absolutely. And that word fear, we've heard it come up with former President Donald Trump during some of his campaigns, saying that there are people on college campuses who have paid their money to get a stellar education, and they are fearful because as soon as they walk out of the dorm rooms, as soon as they walk out of a classroom, they are bombarded by a Gaza war protest. And there is a Homeland Security concern for this because some of the people that are partaking in these protests aren't even students or faculty, Gerard.
They're not students, they're not faculty, they're outside agitators who have some ties to the Middle East, to potentially to terrorist organizations. In New York City, there is Wall Palestine, an organization that started as a student club at CUNY, but has morphed into a group that takes to the streets nearly every day, intimidates people, harasses them, prevents them from exercising their constitutional rights, not just on college campuses, but on city streets. These protests are un-American and anti-Semitic, and they've gotten to the point that they need to be addressed, but we're seeing a failure of leadership at the federal level in addressing them. They're being called First Amendment protected demonstrations when what they are demonstrations intended to negate the constitutional rights of many Americans, the civil rights of most Americans. And what we're seeing is the escalation is in Israel. We're seeing the escalation on American soil, and we're seeing a failure of leadership to address it.
Gerard Filitti, always a pleasure speaking with you openly and candidly about these top breaking news stories. Thank you so much for joining us this Sunday morning. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Anything myself and the viewers need to be keeping a watchful eye on in the coming days?
We need to be keeping an eye on how this is playing out in America. We saw this weekend a man in Boston, in the suburbs of Boston, was shot after he attacked a pro-Israel supporter. A man basically was standing there with an American flag supporting the state of Israel when a person rushed him from across the street, tackled him, and started beating him. The victim was an Iraq war veteran who had to shoot his attacker to defend himself. This is the escalation that we're seeing in America right now, and we need more leadership. We need more action to actually condemn the pro-Hamas agitation that we see.
Gerard, thank you so much again for joining us this Sunday morning. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And as we further discuss conflict in the Middle East right now at 8:04 on the East Coast, I do want to give you a live look at the southern Israel-Gaza border. Southern Israel is where you see the Israeli flag waving there, and then the Gaza border there in the distance with a little haze as these missile strikes do continue at this hour. And we are learning this morning that a small strip of land along Gaza's southern border with Egypt has become a sticking point with the Israel-Hamas ceasefire negotiations. Fox News correspondent Nate Foy has the very latest on these talks.
We embedded with the IDF in the southern Gaza city of Rafah. It is evacuated and completely destroyed. Not a single home is left undamaged. We didn't notice a single civilian. The only people who remain there are IDF soldiers and Hamas terrorists. The IDF presence here on the Philadelphia corridor has become a key sticking point for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in ceasefire negotiations. Under the Philadelphia corridor between Gaza and Egypt are 200 tunnels, including 9 that cross the border. For decades, these tunnels have been used for smuggling, but now the IDF says Hamas terrorists are emerging from these tunnels to fire long-range rockets at Israel and then retreat back into the tunnel for defense purposes. Israel says Hamas's Rafah brigade is defeated but not demolished. The homes of those who lived here are destroyed, while war rages above and below ground. 65 feet underground from this tunnel shaft, the IDF estimates that 6 Israeli hostages, including American-Israeli Hersh Goldberg Poland, were held here for weeks before Hamas terrorists executed them.
And this is something very hard to see. And those brave hostages surviving in these conditions inside the tunnel and being executed by Hamas terrorists.
Tonight in Tel Aviv, hundreds of thousands of Israelis protested yet again, calling on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to reach a ceasefire deal and bring the remaining 101 hostages home. Reporting in Tel Aviv, Nate Foy, Fox News.
Nate, thank you so much for that detailed report. Again, giving you a live look at the southern Israel-Gaza border as the Israel-Hamas war rages on. And again, as Gerard was saying in his interview, you know, the conflicts with Hamas isn't the only conflict in the Middle East. Also conflicts with Hezbollah, conflict with Iran, conflict with those Yemen Houthi rebels.